Welcome to Maybe Text Jimmy Episode 1. Now, if you watched the preview episode, you know that basically we're just trying to get caught up on YouTube right now. So, you will find our first new content should come out on Thursday? Probably Thursday. Thursday sounds about right. We usually record on Wednesdays, sometimes takes a little bit longer, so look for on your podcast listening services. Look for that to come out Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and then once I get all the details in, it'll be Thursday evening once the YouTube video is up. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to us, and again, here is Maybe Text Jimmy Episode 1.
Welcome everyone again to the first official episode of Maybe Text Jimmy, a Better Call Saul podcast. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Cody.
And we're about to talk about and analyze a bit for you guys Better Call Saul, episode 1 of season 3, titled Mabel. I don't think anything hidden very much with that title. Pretty straightforward.
Indeed.
It's the book. The storybook that binds Chuck and Jimmy, given their possibly their last happy moment as a brotherhood. But first official airtime, April 10th, that last week at this recording, 10 o'clock. I believe there's one every week about that time. This one was directed by Vince Gilligan, the head honcho of the Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul universe, and written by both Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould, so the top dogs coming out of the gate.
Indeed.
And unless you have any more preliminary notes, I'll get into the recap.
No, we can't forget about the lily pond. Like that's the most important thing. We cannot forget about the garden and the lily pond.
Oh, yes, of course. It's important. All the things. You gotta name all the things.
It's gotta be my name.
Some dirty judge will take that pond in your garden, in your yard, right out from under you.
Indeed.
Those poor old people. Anyway, alright. So first scene, as it's become tradition, the very first scene of the season is a black and white Gene scene. Opening in black and white, we see Gene, aka Jimmy. Oh, and let me stop real quick. And just in case you didn't hear our preview episode, full spoilers for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul in this show, in this podcast. So you're warned. Get out of here if you don't want to hear all that. We open in the black and white in the Cinnabon store to the tune of Sugartown by Nancy Sinatra. A catchy song. I wanted to look it up. He checks on his employees before a time lapse of the workday until lunchtime, including the many steps of the Cinnabon fun work prep, which included like icing them and made me really want one. I assume they're getting some money for this, for the advertising. Gene eventually de-uniforms and heads on to his lunch break, grabbing a book called The Moon's a Balloon, which is a memoir by a British actor, David Niven, who I've never heard of, and a Kansas City Royals lunchbox, which the Kansas City Royals, a Kim allusion possibly. We've seen her in the sweatshirt. We know she's from that area, so I don't know why. I guess that might be the only way Jimmy/Gene can remember her at that point. And I'd never heard of that actor, The Moon's a Balloon. I don't really know. I haven't read the book.
There has to be something to that, though. I feel like if they're going to throw something into the show...
And the shot was a clear, like... It was on the book in the lunchbox, and Gene walked into the scene, so they wanted us to be able to see that title clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So we may have to look into what that's about, unless we see it pop up again next season in the next Gene scene. Gene goes to sit on a bench, still inside the mall, though. While he's reading, a teenage boy drops what looks to be a Blu-ray or like a game, but something in one of those plastic security lock boxes that you open with a magnet, and then picks it up and puts it in his jacket. But Gene and the boy make eye contact, and Gene sees him hide in the photo booth just, like, right a few feet in front of him. Like, what are you doing, kid? Like, you trust that guy that much? Anyway, but within seconds, a police officer approaches and somehow didn't see him just then jump into the photo booth and asks Gene where he was, if he saw the kid. But Gene kind of just stays silent for a weirdly long time, and the cop's like, come on, man, did you see him or not? And then he points it to the photo booth without saying anything. And then the officer, now accompanied by a mall cop, arrests the boy in front of Gene. And the cop thanks him for helping, but as they walk away with the boy, Gene stands up and yells to the boy to say nothing and get a lawyer. And the mall cop calls Gene an asshole. Because
Yeah.
he helped him, and then, like, he was just like, no, don't work with these guys, kid. They're dicks.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut to Gene back in the Cinnabon, checking on his employees, and he starts his help with a batch of cinnamon rolls before he falls on the floor, apparently unconscious. So, and then we cut away for presumably a whole another year, and we don't get to see what happens with Gene.
Yeah.
So, the third black and white Gene scene. Still in the Cinnabon, no color here, no Better Call Saul commercials. But we see he's kind of coming undone. Like, it looked maybe a heart attack or an anxiety attack by the end. He can't take this life. He needs to do some lawyering. He needs to help this kid.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to slip and Jimmy it up.
Yeah, you can tell that he had a real big, there was a big conflict in it because he knew that it was Omaha police, and he really, really doesn't want to draw any attention to himself by the police, and you can tell.
And you know he had a whole speech in there, a cop speech to get him away.
Yeah.
And just a clowny, drawing attention to himself, helping the client in there, but he couldn't. If he did it,
he's potentially blown his cover.
So he's conflicted. He can't even say anything. He just points.
Yep.
He just points.
And so but I think it's really telling about his character, like you said, that he so desperately needs to be the Saul character because he goes through it and he sort of rats the kid out. And then not sort of, he absolutely rats the kid out, but he's like, no, I can't do this. This isn't right. Get a lawyer. And I think ultimately we're probably going to see him come out and try and find this kid and do whatever he can to represent him. And I'd probably be another follow-up. I don't know, because it's so odd. They wouldn't focus so much on the kid if he's not going to come back to a certain degree. I think
Fair
that
point.
it's...
I heard you get a chance to listen to the Insider podcast for this episode. Well, I did the other day, and apparently that kid is was the star of a Disney show or something. I don't remember which one, but Vince Gilligan was talking about it. And when they were filming this scene, it was a whole day of shooting for this one. They got it done in a whole day. It's a lot because they can only get 7 or 8 to film an episode. But anyway, they had Bob Odenkirk and the kid, and people would come up to the kid and ask him for autographs and pictures and stuff, and didn't notice Bob because it was the Disney show crowd is different from the Better Call Saul crowd, I guess. And, yeah.
You know, those Disney kids hitting up those malls.
Yeah, stealing stuff. All right. Let's move on. The next scene, we're back in the quote-unquote present. Past if you're thinking Breaking Bad terms, but the present of this show, Better Call Saul.
And there's something that sort of strikes me odd, the fact that all of the Gene scenes are black and white. Because usually if you think black and white, you're thinking sort of either old-timey or something towards the past. I wonder why it is that the Gene scene...
I've always read it as there's no more flavor or flair to his life. The color's all gone. Saul liked the color he suits, the clowniness. He added color in his life. He made that whole character. Jimmy made the whole character of Saul up. We haven't seen it actually happen yet. But that's a defining characteristic, and he has to keep it away. That's what I thought of when in the first Gene scene there is color, and you only see it reflected in his glasses in the Better Call Saul commercial. So that's when his life had color and meaning and all that good stuff. And also on the Insider podcast, they said they love to shoot black and white scenes because the color people who come behind and do everything, they don't have to do anything. They just have to make it clear, and then coloring and the color theory representation of this means that and stuff, it's all gone. There's a lot of time saved in black and white scenes. But yeah, hopefully we will see a transition from black and white to color in a season or 2, or surely not 3. I bet they only make it 2. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they go anything past 5 seasons. There's only so much to work with.
You gotta think so. I want a Saul season and then at least a few Gene episodes at the end of one.
Anyway.
Scene 2. So we're back in the present, and we're back to color. And we resume at the ass end of last season's episode, at the end of Chuck and Jimmy's fight, and which is the one Chuck recorded just before Jimmy leaves through an aluminum foil curtain, or is that what you would call it, aluminum?
something like it's that stupid. It looked like a lot to the insulation stuff.
The insulation, the space blankety insulation. I'm just gonna call it aluminum. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
But through a curtain because Chuck had like wallpapered his house with that at the very end of last season. But Jimmy, he's just been yelling at Chuck like, "Do you feel better? See, I did it for Kim. All that, blah blah blah." Admitting to the crime. It's a big crime of tampering, and just to get at his brother and help Kim get the Mesa Verde people back. Chuck strains to put the electric tape recorder into an aluminum sealed drawer in his desk, like he's doing his whole God, the electric waves, they hurt, oh my God, so much. But he puts it into that special drawer he had already made. While Jimmy has just stepped outside for a second, he hasn't driven away from the house yet, and he gets his cell phone out of the mailbox because Chuck and his craziness makes him still put the thing in the mailbox and ground himself and all that. But Jimmy calls Howard and lets him know that Chuck's not in fact retiring and all that, and to just calm down, and they have their little usual bicker. And Jimmy heads inside to help Chuck take down the space blanket walls, but not to Chuck's liking. Like Chuck, he's being his usual asshole self as he instructs Jimmy on the correct way to remove duct tape from the wall so as not to do any kind of damage to his crappy walls. Ugh. I don't like Chuck, if you could tell.
No, there's honestly, and this sort of leads into sort of the next thing that happens with the whole day. They find the book. I think that
let me do this one last sentence. Okay. Jimmy finds the titular of the episode "Adventures of Mabel" book, and the brothers reminisce about Chuck having read the story to Jimmy before Chuck breaks the conversation with his ominous "You will pay." But go on.
Anyway, I'm getting a really big, like, there's almost a parent complex, like something that extends beyond a superiority complex, because Chuck has always been so disappointed in what Jimmy is and disagrees with everything that he is. Never mind that he's actually a lawyer and that he's actually a pretty damn good one. Like, it was just so odd that, like, Jimmy said there, he's talking about, oh yeah, my mom read me this book, and Chuck's like, no, I read you that book. But that's just, it's so honestly jarring, because I mean, it's almost like he needs credit. He needs to be the one that's sort of hurting Jimmy through life, and sort of like he has to always have this hand in whatever it is that Jimmy's doing, and that's why he really, I think honestly that might be one of the reasons, I mean, it's been touched upon, why Chuck dislikes so much as a lawyer. Because one, yes, obviously he doesn't think that he's a lawyer from a prestigious degree, but Jimmy didn't tell Chuck that he was doing. It was just, surprise, I'm a lawyer. And he didn't have a hand in it. He didn't push him along that way. It's something that it's, Chuck wants to have this almost a parent, it's acting almost as a parent. There's something with their mom. There's something with their parents.
Just Chuck's attitude seems to be, know your place, Jimmy. Like, you're not a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. You're a fuck up. I'll read you the story, you're the baby, I'll get you out of trouble. But when you start to be a lawyer, you're jumping with a machine gun, you're horrible at it, just, you're bad for the world, this is not how you're supposed to be, you're not supposed to rise up, you're not supposed to feel good about yourself. That's my role. And it's even worse for Chuck, because, like, he's got this crazy, like, electromagnetic whatever, we still don't really know what caused it, but, like, he's trapped in the house, and Jimmy's off being a lawyer and being a weird one. Like, he's pretty good at, like, I don't know how good he is in a courtroom, like we saw that at the beginning of season 1, but we know Jimmy eventually Saul's really good at wheeling and dealing, and, like, that's his thing, and he's super sleazy and shady, but he's pretty good.
It's like, most people like to judge a lawyer based on how they perform in court, but honestly, I would say that where Jimmy really shines and shows that he is a good lawyer is that he can take care of things outside of court. Yes, they're sleazy. Most times they're illegal. But still, he's good at being someone's lawyer, and he will do whatever it takes to, take care of his client. He wants
money, but he wants, like, especially Jimmy now, that's why we kind of don't want to see him turn into Saul, even though we know he's going to, that he puts the client first. Like, later he really wants money, and, like, Walt becomes his meal ticket. And it's just like, he cares deep down, and we see Gene wanting to get back to those days. Oh, and I looked up The Adventures of Mabel. It is in fact a real book, but no further meaning ascribed to it than Vince Gilligan said on the Insider podcast that he his mom read it to him and his brother. So he put it in there to make his mom happy. So that when she would see the episode, she'd light up. So that's it's just a fun like little kid's book. Yeah. All right. Next scene. At Kim and Jimmy's joint law office. I forget if they called it anything. I didn't notice. They have that like HM or not HM, but like MW logo. But I forget if they called their joint office anything. I doubt it because they're not partners, as Kim made it clear. Anyway, Kim is seeing one of Jimmy's former elderly clients about finishing a will. This is the pond garden lady with her daughter. As a frustrated. Jimmy returns to a frustrated Kim as she reiterates they're not partners, so the client, among others, is now her responsibility. Because, like, if they were part of the same firm or they were partners, like, they could just share all the work. But since they're not just in the same, they're just in the same building, like, if one lawyer does work for another, then the client-lawyer confidentiality takes effect for them. Mm-hmm. But if she shared it with Jimmy now, then that's a violation. Like, that's illegal. You definitely can't do that. Not just, and Jimmy's like, whatever, but that's how he is. Jimmy enters an introspective state as he reflects on a time when Chuck didn't hate him. Like, you can see he really likes his brother. He wants him back, but, like, he can't handle... I mean, obviously Chuck's been a huge dick and, like, dropped several bombshells on himself and now Kim, and he can't let that stand, but he misses his big brother. He misses being that role of having Chuck come save him, I think. But he still wants to be his own guy.
I agree. I don't know. I guess it just sort of... This rings true, especially because it sort of shows how broken and very real all these characters are. The one thing that I love so much about the Breaking Bad universe, and just namely with Vince Gilligan, is how believable he makes his characters. Like, how they can be in completely unbelievable, absurd situations, like we saw all the time in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. But they're broken. They're fundamentally flawed. It goes to one of the big themes of the show, I think, is that everyone is a sinner. Everyone has this, no matter how good they look on the outside, everyone has their, they all have, their baggage to carry, their sins, so to speak. And this sort of, no matter how shitty it is that Chuck treats Jimmy still loves his brother. And Jimmy still wants the approval of his brother and still wants his brother to love him. And it just sucks for him. And you can see how this is reflected. Like, for this 15 minutes, and he remembered what it was like to not have his brother hate him. And it rings true. It's something that's very... something that you can really empathize with, something you can connect with, especially if you've had anyone who has ever just said, no, fuck you. Done everything they can to fuck you over. And it's...
For sure. And Chuck was not even really doing that. He was like, he's like, I fucked you over, but, like, I had to. You were losing your place. Like, I'm supposed to be this, you're supposed to be that, so just learn, like, you can't be a lawyer. You're a monkey with a machine gun. Just get back to how we were.
I don't know. I think that Chuck is actively being an asshole. Like I said, goes back to the superiority thing. Everything he's doing is... again, another... And
now, he's definitely fighting him now. I meant, like, earlier in the show.
Well, I think that even earlier in the show, another big theme that I think exists in the show is, like, with Breaking Bad, one of the big themes was this is a good person who is trying to be bad and succeeding. And with Better Call Saul, it's bad people trying to be good and failing. And
or at least the one.
No, I think in general. You can look through any... and I picked out a lot in this particular episode. Bad people trying to be good and failing. And that I think that... like, Chuck is a really prime example of this. He is a bad person. He is absolutely one of the scummier characters on the show. And he is, by his skewed sense, trying to do good by keeping Jimmy down, putting him back in his place. And he is kind of... like, he's kind of failing because all this he's trying to do to put him back in his place, Jimmy finds a way to come around, and ultimately, yes, he turns into Saul. But I think that Chuck is actively being a scummy person. He is actively trying to, from the very start. I mean, absolutely from the very start. If you remember, he did everything he could to make certain that Howard did not let him into let him into the law firm. These are all actively scummy things from the very beginning.
That's very true. This relationship, we know it can't last.
Exactly.
Like we literally know, but I want to see. I want to see the end, like what blows up, and I assume it'll be tragic. But anyway, the very next scene, more of Chuck. Chuck shows Howard the recording while they're in Chuck's house. So he's had Howard over. He has Howard put the recorder back in the space blanket wrapped drawer immediately after. It's like, all right, you heard it. Now, quick, get away from me. It's hurting. Howard is furious with Jimmy and frustrated at Chuck for not keeping him in the loop. Howard has trouble finding a use for the tape, but Chuck is confident in a use, but we don't hear it on screen. Like, poor Howard.
Yeah.
Like, he sat up as the bad guy for us, the audience, through all of season 1, and now he's just having to deal with this familial brother spat that he has nothing to do with, and it's like his job's in the line, and poor dude.
I think that saying that he was furious is probably a little bit of hyperbole, because I don't think that Howard was furious. I think Howard is just fed up. And not even, fair. I shouldn't even say fed up, because that even adds more anger to it than really is. It's just, he's tired.
And he just goes, your brother's a real piece of work, a piece of shit. I forget what he said.
No, he's your brother's a real son of a bitch. No offense. But, Howard is probably one of the more interesting people in the show, I think. He was, like I said, he was set up as this bad guy from the very beginning, and even going into season 2 a little bit, he was just sort of this bad guy, and you didn't really want to like him. But the more it goes along, if you watch Game of Thrones, he's almost like the Jaime Lannister character, where from the very beginning, I mean, again, I'm going to spoil a bit of the very first episode of Game of Thrones, but I mean, Jaime Lannister throws one of the, what you'd imagine to be one of the most important characters out
so
from
head
a
out
building.
For like 30 seconds.
Yes. Throws him out of a window, and you're like, oh my god, what is this guy doing? And he's fucking his sister? What is this? And then you grow to really like it.
It's just the first episode, people calm down.
You're killing me right now. But anyway, that Jaime Lannister character, you end up growing to really like him. And it's sort of the same thing with Howard here. You started out not liking him because he's doing everything he can to keep Jimmy down, but as it turns out, it's just because he's trying to do Chuck's bidding a little bit. And you can tell that I don't think that Howard is this really rosy smelling guy. I think, again, still he is a bad person trying to do good and failing. But, I don't think that he was necessarily furious. I think he was almost like, I mean, really, this is that friend that you talk to and you try and talk about your problems and they really just don't care. But they're like, oh yeah, that really sucks, man.
Let's get back to what matters.
Yeah, let's, and because he sits there and he even tries to be pretty frank with Chuck, like, what did this accomplish? And he said it straight out. I don't understand what you hope to gain.
I'm glad they did that, because he's kind of acting as a surrogate for the audience there, I think. Because at the end of season 2, I think a lot of people were just like, oh my gosh, Chuck's got him, oh my god. But now we've had all this time to digest, or maybe from the beginning of seeing it, some people were just like, well, wait a minute. He definitely can't use this in court. Like, what is he going to do? And they cleared that up. Well, they didn't clear it up exactly, but they showed that the writers empathize with us, and as does Howard. Like, what are you gonna do, Chuck? And Chuck's like, oh, don't you worry, we're gonna get him.
Which I think is going to be equally scummy.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't know. I want to know.
I think that we'll see.
And this is another important contrast to last season, where Jimmy said, "quote Chuck, come on, roll around in the dirt with me." Like he was just trying to goad Chuck into doing anything like a little bit shady, and Chuck was like, nope, law's sacred, I'll get you in the sacred lawy way. And now he's definitely rolling around in the dirt with Jimmy. Which it would be curious if you would ask Chuck right now if he sees that. He probably wouldn't, because Chuck likes to deny that sort of thing.
Which makes you wonder, because he's so effortlessly doing this. Like, he's got this convoluted plan that you really don't know where it's going, but he has an end game in this. And so it makes you wonder, no one just overnight is all into subterfuge and all that. Like, perhaps Chuck has always been into this shady dirty bit, and maybe that's even why he doesn't like what Jimmy does, because he sees it as shady, because he sees it in himself, that he himself does these same exact things.
Yeah. It's like, Jimmy, this is all fine, but you gotta hide it better. You gotta deny yourself more. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see it. See how people can't see that I'm chummy? Mm-hmm. Not chummy. What am I trying to say? Shady. Ugh. Damn Chuck. Anyway, let's go to a completely different area of Albuquerque still, I think. We resume Mike's storyline, also at the end of last season, the very end, when he finds the note on his windshield, written on it, "Don't," and nothing else. And then we cut to Mike driving the car he got for his sniper job, frantically through, because that's not his usual, black Cadillac, I think, car, his old man car, but it's like a station wagon. Yeah. Anyway, he's driving frantically through the desert, but after a while, he's still on the dirt road, but he gets out and he checks the tires and the undercarriage for tracking devices. Then he gets back. He can't find one, but he drives back to the junkyard or an auto shop or something. It's mostly a junkyard, it looks like, where he puts the car up on a lift, meaning it was a forklift, to check it more thoroughly. He dismantles damn near every piece of the car, but in the seats, he cuts into the seats. He just takes apart all the doors, but finds nothing. In what I thought was a very cool time lapse. Which poor Jonathan Banks, if it was a hot day, but where every piece of the car is getting laid out and taken apart, and we get this bird's eye view, which I thought looked pretty cool. Then Mike finally is perplexed. We've never seen Mike this perplexed, and the mechanic eventually comes out and says, "Hey, we're about to close," and Mike's like, "All right," and he's asked the guy to call him a cab, but as he's waiting, you can tell he's thinking to himself. And he notices they sell gas caps, which makes him get an idea. And he heads back to his disassembled car, picks up his gas cap, and sure enough, there's a tracking device between the two pieces of the gas cap itself. It's not a bug. It's just to track your motion where you go. Mike returns home to find a similar one on his own car's gas cap, the black old man car. And then he takes down all the information from the device's label using a cool, magnifying glass thing, because it's a very tiny device, before reassembling the gas cap, and he puts it back in place. So he leaves it where it was. Now, we're back to Mike, and such a contrast between the scenes in sheer just amount of dialogue. Mm-hmm. Mike says 3 words to this mechanic through the whole crazy driving desert scene, but you're never bored, and then just Jonathan Banks emoting is all you need through these scenes.
Yes, it was a very great scene. Probably the biggest standout thing for me for these particular scenes was just not the acting, because the acting, anyone really could have probably done the acting that happened in that particular scene, because always just walk around a car looking up underneath. Anyone could have been instructed how to do that, and like you said, there's maybe 2 or 3 bits of dialogue. What really stood out to me was something that was done in post. It was the music, but also one of those things is the desert scene. Whenever he is driving out and he pulls up, he's up against a fence, and there's this storm rolling through. And what really surprised me, if you didn't know, is that was a completely real storm. They actually, the cinematography on it was amazing. It was an actual, real thunderstorm. And just the way that looks, the way that felt, it was very foreboding, but it was also natural. There was nothing that was done in post to make that scene, and it really was just absolutely great. But then
they get so lucky with things like that.
Kind of. But then, what I loved most about the disassembly scene was the music in the background, because nothing else is happening. There's no dialogue, there's nothing. And there are 3 bits of musical interest here that really struck out to me. The first is just how contemplative, introspective. It's almost the music is kind of plucky. There's not a whole lot of definite themes or tones. It's picking around, feeling where the next note might be, and that's exactly what Mike's doing. He is picking around this car. He has no idea. He knows there's something there, and the music knows there's something there, but he can't really find it. He's trying to put his thumb on it, and it's a very curious sort of sound to it. And then it goes into him in the actual mechanic, and the music becomes very driven. It's focused. It's got an idea. It's got that sort of direction that's going, and so does Mike. Mike knows exactly where this bug is, and he's going to go and he's going to find it. And he goes, he tears it apart, and the music sort of builds up to it. But then the following shot is of him in his home, and it's completely silent. Because up to this point, all of the music has really given us a clue into what's going on in Mike's mind. What's going on, what are his thoughts, what's going through his head, and then it's silent. There is no music.
No clue.
And it's because there is no thought. There is only one choice. And Mike is focused. He's not contemplating. He knows exactly what he's going to do, and there's nothing else to it. And that is, I thought, was just beautiful. I loved it so much.
I agree. I wasn't sure what he was going to do at that point.
And that's even the best, but one of my favorite things about Mike. Mike might be one of the smartest people on the show.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, there's some throw up on there who is actually the smartest, but I mean, it was almost noir-esque.
Stuff like this, it's Mike.
Yes.
Out in the field work.
Mm-hmm. You have no idea what Mike's doing, but you know he has it all figured out. And this is, I think, juxtaposed with Chuck, because you know that Chuck has something figured out, but it's really scummy, and it's going to be really shady. But Mike is just this purely logical. He's going to think through everything. There is a cause and effect to everything, and that plays out throughout the rest of this episode.
It's just on the face of it that it's not Chuck and Jimmy fighting with law speak and in between. It's a deep relationship. It's just, I got to figure this out, or it's going to be trouble for me. So let's do it.
I agree.
Here we go.
Mike is one of my favorite characters. He's
for sure.
One of the best parts about the show to me. It's kind of sad that it's sort of diverting a little bit to where it's more the Mike and Jimmy show than Better Call Saul. It's not Saul, what's going on in his life, and how Mike fits into that. It's sort of now they're doing their own two things. I hope that all comes back together. We had talked about that in the previous episode.
In one of the next, it's either next season on, or this season on, or next episode on, there's Mike and Jimmy are together in at least one scene. They're just, you can't tell really what they're doing, but they're just talking to each other in a car. So it looks like Mike enlists Jimmy again for some reason. So hopefully they heard the audience outcry of, hey, these are becoming really separate stories, and they're going to try and bring them back together. Because we know they're still together years down the road in Breaking Bad in some capacity, even if it's just professional. Moving on, the next scene, we're back to Jimmy. Jimmy's attempting to finish up with a client at the office, kind of like hurrying her along as she's trying to, I'll show you these pictures of my other grandkids next time. I'll be back. And then next on his list of appointments is the military. I think it's an Air Force.
Air Force.
Air Force captain that he tricked in last season. He tricked him into allowing Jimmy a photo with the warplane for his Gimme Jimmy commercial. And he brought Fudge, the fake, like, Colonel Fudge or something like that, and as a way for him and his rookie film crew to get the shot of him by the plane.
Again, here, Saul being really, I should say, Jimmy being really tongue-in-cheek. Fudge.
Right,
is
exactly.
A farce.
Yeah. And then the captain's furious, obviously, at Jimmy for misleading him and threatens legal action unless Jimmy stops the commercial. The captain eventually storms out after Jimmy refuses. And Jimmy was like, why does everyone treat me like this? It's horrible. I'm just trying to get by. And he doesn't get what the captain sees is so bad. The captain storms out, and we may not see him again. I'd be alright with that if that thread's just like, wow, if the captain's like, nah, this guy, we're just not going to worry about it, he's a lawyer. Or if it's a hanging thread, like, I guess that would be alright. But it seems like we've got too many more big fish to fry, and this might have just been a character moment.
Yeah, I think this, again, plays into the bad people trying to do good and failing. Because, ultimately you'll see that the captain is not a great person. Because he's going into this he's trying to do right, he's trying to make Jimmy come back to his come to see how he sees things, to take the commercial off the air. It's no good, yada yada, blah blah blah. And then Jimmy's like, okay, fine, you do that, but then I'm going to go through and I'm going to trash your reputation because you a captain, you let me do all this stuff, and like you take me down, that's fine, but you're going to get dirty too, man. And so Scott, he's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to make Jimmy stop because what Jimmy did was wrong. But ultimately, and I think this is how it's going to play out, he's going to choose not to, but to protect himself, to protect his rank, to protect himself. So again, here's a bad person who's trying to do good, but ultimately fails for his own better interests. And again, I think this is a really strong theme that plays out throughout this show, and here's just it further evidenced.
Yeah, and you can see him, like, especially we don't get any more, you can see him just as like a hapless dude. Like, why would he look into Colonel Fudge anymore at the time? Like, who would lie about that? That's crazy. Mm-hmm. That's probably why he's so perplexed later. But yeah, just a good insight into Jimmy. Like, it's easy to get way more on his side after the thing with Chuck, but then like we gotta also see that this guy's not great. He's not gonna see these things in himself either. Mm-hmm. He might run over people like he sees it's not such a big deal, but like if it happened to him and he got slighted like that, he'd probably see it a different way and go and fight. And yeah, it's just more denial by the McGill brothers. Next scene. Mike's back in the troll booth, and it's late. He gets off work, and he takes off his gas cap and leaves it on the top of a ledge in that parking garage before he drives away. That's a good way to slosh gas and waste money there, Mike. But we cut to Mike waiting, and he checks his watch next to his car near what appears to be a warehouse as he stands outside in the dark, and the vet drives up. The vet that Mike's gotten his shady jobs from, and he complains about how late it is. Like he says, it's like 3:30, and Mike asks for the vet to get him one of the tracking devices he found. Where he had written down all the information. He just gives it to the guy, and then the vet's like, "Well, all right, but it's gonna cost you however much it is plus my end, which is gonna be $1,000 because you drug me out here this late." And Mike's like, "All right, here you go," because he got all that money from like ripping off one of Hector's guys last season, and he was like buying drinks for all the bar patrons and all that stuff. So Mike's still rolling in cash a little bit here. And the vet also, he asked about Mike's dog before he left, which I thought was nice, just to remind us that, hey, oh right, that's the vet, but also to show like, oh, this guy's not just a total asshole to Mike.
Yeah, or just a total asshole in general.
They got it, or just to people maybe he just likes the dogs. Yeah. Anything? Pretty straightforward scene. You got anything for that?
Pretty straightforward.
All right. Next up, we get a Kim scene. Kim's meeting at Mesa Verde with Paige.
Sure.
I think her name is. It's the wife of the guy who is like the top dog here at Mesa Verde. She's going over documents for the upcoming hearing, and it's Paige. Paige berates Chuck and HHM in kind of like a gossipy way to Kim. Like, oh, they were so awful, they couldn't even get this right, and they couldn't even get the address and all that stuff. And it makes Kim uncomfortable, because even though she's intent to never talk about it with Jimmy, she knows that, guess what, it's Jimmy did this, and that's why she has this client. And then we got to Kim back in the office after she's taken the document back to double-check them. She keeps changing minute details, like punctuation, like she changed a semicolon to a colon to a comma to a space.
Hey man, that semicolon was a travesty.
And back in the office, it's late at night, and Jimmy's painting over this rainbow that I guess was left over from the dentist's office when their office was that. They've already got rid of the chairs. About half the rainbow still remains. Kim can't bring herself to hole punch the document to leave after Jimmy said, "All right, let's go." Like kind of, all right, and then she goes to hole punch it to finish it up. Gonna mail it up or gonna bring it over the next day. Can't bring herself to, and she's like, I'll just be another minute. And Jimmy busts open the paint can again because he knows they're going to be there a while. I like this scene, insight into Kim, where she knows that it was just, like, all Jimmy did was flip 2 numbers. And she's figured that out. And so she's figuring out if she flips 2 numbers or makes one error, then she's on her own. She doesn't have the strength as a career lawyer to bounce back. Like HHM will have no real problem. Where if she messes up and Paige is saying all that stuff about her to their next whoever they hire after her, then she's done. And it's ultimately Jimmy's fault that she's feeling this way.
Yeah, it's ultimately her fault, but still, it's to Jimmy's credit. She wouldn't be in this position without him for the good. Like she would not be able to. She wouldn't be able to have this client. She wouldn't be doing this work. She wouldn't, still be on her feet if it worked for Jimmy. But you can tell it's a real big source of conflict for her. Like you said, that she absolutely gets what happened. There's no doubt in her mind.
Yeah, she doesn't want to do all that shady stuff to get her clients. She would have rather, I would think, from what we know about Kim, I would think she would rather go about it the right way and just try and out hustle. And if she loses, then she's going to be sad like she was, but she lost. And then Jimmy's like, well, no, that's stupid.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do this shady thing and get your client back. Here you go.
Yeah.
You love me even more now, right? But nope.
Yeah.
It's just making
It's
her conscience itch.
Yeah, because she knows. I think the worst part about it for her is that she knows that there is this part of her that is dishonest. Like, for instance, they sat and got probably a couple $1,000 worth of really nice tequila out of a guy in season 2.
That's true.
And like she loved it. She sat there and she was just so giddy and happy, and she's like, "Yeah, we should totally do this again." So she knows that there's this part of her that can and kind of wants to do bad, and it's sort of reconciling those two sides of her life.
I think a hard line for Kim is her job now that she's becoming aware of it. Like, she doesn't want to do that with her lawyering. She never has, whereas Jimmy never thought of himself as going to be a lawyer back when he was slipping Jimmy. So he sees it as a way to amplify all that stuff and like use his slipping skills for good. Where Kim just like, yeah, she likes it and she can have that fun outside of work, but like, and with Jimmy, which is one other reason, like, why are they working together? That's the dumbest, like, in real life, if you meet someone at work and you start dating, that's risky enough as it is, but then like, hey, let's quit this job and just be basically partners and work in the same space all day and then go home and be with each other all the time.
I've been in enough bad relationships to know that doesn't end well.
That there's no way. Like, you don't get any space, and you see each other's shadiness, and that sounds weird from a relationship standpoint. But anyway,
these are clearly honeymoon phase people.
That's over by season 4 minimum.
Mm-hmm.
You got anything else for the Kim centric scene?
No, not really. Nothing that I haven't already talked about. You don't often see. You shouldn't say words. Sorry, word salad. You don't often see too many scenes that are more Kim-centric, and so it's nice to get that little insight into her and see what's going on.
I like those last season, especially the one where she digs up Mesa Verde and it's gone over like days to try and get out of the doghouse with Howard, and then it doesn't work.
But still,
she's a good actress.
Yeah, it's nice to see her as
fully fleshed out character.
Yeah, and that's, like I said earlier, the writing and the characterization of these people are just great. Yeah. You can't help but believe that they...
Vincent Peters' forte. All right, next scene, Ernie, who is, if you don't remember, it's the, I guess the end of season 1, when Jimmy found out what Chuck had originally done, like kept around a law firm.
Ernesto, you mean?
Yeah.
Ernie,
yeah. Chuck calls him Ernesto because he's a piece of shit. And then Jimmy always calls him Ernie, and everybody else calls him Ernie because that's what he goes by. But anyway, he's the little nerdy-looking dude who now has to do Chuck's errands for him. Poor guy. He works for HHM, I guess, in the mailroom because that's how he knew Jimmy. But, like, he's interning or something and having to do just this odd job of helping Chuck. Anyway.
Odd job.
Yeah, it's very odd. Chuck's an odd guy. But he brings supplies over to Chuck's in this scene. He does ground himself. They shot the grounding device where he pokes it. Made a point. Among the supplies are batteries that Ernie wrapped in foil for Chuck's sake. This is actually aluminum foil, I'm sure of it. Chuck starts to change the batteries of a tape recorder, but he seems unable to. He's like struggling, like the waves are hitting him, and he's just, oh God, all right, Ernie, come on. He acts like, oh God, this is embarrassing to ask, but will you please change these batteries? And Ernie accidentally hits play on the recorder, and he hears Jimmy admit to changing the numbers of the documents in the Mesa Verde case. And then Chuck's like, turn that off, no. He berates Ernie and makes it clear that he cannot tell anyone about what he's heard, or he'll face serious consequences, legal ones. Don't want that. Nobody wants that. Right, Ernie? And Chuck puts the tape recorder away. Once Ernie leaves, he uses tongs to put him away, but then he, like, flips him in the air, all smug-like, with satisfaction. Alright. So, Chuck's clearly full of shit. Mm-hmm. He wanted Ernie to hear that exact thing. He had the tape recorder flipped over on the buttons. He had it rewound or fast-forwarded to that exact part where Jimmy says, yeah, I flipped the numbers, the incriminating part. So he wanted Ernie to have that knowledge. What is Chuck gonna do with Ernie?
I am uncertain because to me, it could go two ways. First, Ernie knows Jimmy, and so clearly he could hear and identify that, hey, yeah, that's Jimmy on the tape. So does it mean that Chuck is trying to set Ernie up as a fall man because he figures that he's probably going to go and blab at some point to someone at H&M? And so then, take the tank, because then it's a little bit more to go on in that sense, or probably just as likely is he's kind of hoping that Ernie's going to reach out to Chuck, and Ernie's going to reach out to Jimmy, like, hey, Chuck has this recording of you. I don't know if you have it, and then probably spur some kind of break-in and catch Jimmy trying to break in and take it, and then imply culpability in this instance.
I don't know about like break-in or whatever, but I definitely think Chuck intends for Ernie to tell Jimmy, because Chuck knows that Ernie lied for Jimmy, that he doesn't know for sure, but Chuck figured it out, that Ernie lied and said he called Jimmy, and that's why Jimmy was right there at the copy place when Chuck hit his head. And so he knows Ernie and Jimmy are tight a little bit, and so he figures Ernie's going to tell Jimmy, and Jimmy's going to do something stupid and then really incriminate himself. But yeah, so I think that Ernie is just Chuck's way of getting the info to Jimmy about the recording without having to tell him, because obviously that's not part of the game.
Yeah. I'm really interested because this is looking forward, but they had in the next episode, they show Howard crouching in the bushes, looking into a house, all surprised. I wonder. I don't know. Howard plays into the sun. I feel like that has to be looking into Chuck's house,
or else Chuck wouldn't have brought Howard. He would just left him in the dark like he had been. But he needs Howard for some reason.
Yeah. I almost sort of think that maybe he expected Howard to be a little bit more on board, but Howard is, again,
he's fed up with all this stuff.
He's that friend's like, yeah, that sucks, but let's get back to the more pressing point. He doesn't see this as a big deal, and he says that, yeah, I totally believe you, man. I totally feel you, but again, how many times have we ever talked to that shitty friend and like, you get me, right? He's like, oh yeah, man, I totally feel you. Yeah, great. When I think that Howard might even sort of be rooting for Jimmy a little bit, because he sees how much his brother loathes him, how much like he's doing whatever he can to fuck with Jimmy. Then maybe a
little bit.
I don't think this is big driving part, but I think that there is a point, there is a spot in Howard's mind where like, this is just gonna.
We really don't like. We talked about Kim-centric scenes. We really haven't had a Howard-centric scene. He's always supporting Chuck, or he was Kim's employer, or he's with Jimmy antagonistically, and so we don't really have much insight into Howard, but I think, he's gonna just, he's on Chuck's side because that's where the money is, and he's known Chuck longer, and Chuck's been a mentor, but I think he's just, like you said earlier, fed up, and he just wants the brotherly spat to end, and like, let's get back to work, and get you over this electric bullshit, and all that good stuff. Poor Howard. We hated him for so long, and he's still kind of a douche. Alright, final scene. Mike, we're back to Mike. He examines the tracking device. The new one, presumably, that the vet got him. He's now got it at the same table he was examining the other one at. He takes the old one and sees what happens when the batteries are removed. And then he goes, gets the gap, removes the original tracking device, and replaces it with his new one. And then he reassembles the gas cap and puts it back into place. He links up the original tracking device's battery to his radio and leaves it playing. And after a time lapse, the radio has stopped, and the tracker, which Mike throws away, is now dead. Mike sets up a chair by the window, looking outside. It's dark and quiet, and eats, I think, pistachios.
These are pistachios.
Some shelled nut, but yeah, pistachios. While he watches his car. Like, no TV, no more radio, nothing. This sounds horrible, and no one can do it but a cop/ex-cop, because he's on a stakeout. And after another time lapse, someone pulls up to Mike's car to presumably swap out the tracking devices, and then after the person leaves, Mike readies his tracking monitor and drives after the person. So we see Mike's plan from earlier come to fruition as he noticed on his monitor that the battery, once it died, the signal on the monitor saying, hey, we can't track this anymore, the battery's dead. So he knew they would have to come switch it. But they got Mike's new one. Now he, with his monitor, can track the person back to whoever it is. Their HQ. Now, I don't think it's Gus himself, but it's one of Gus's dudes, right? Who else could it be?
I think it's definitely connected with the Salamancas. There's cartel people here.
Oh, you think it's the cartel that put the tracker on him?
I think so. I mean,
like Nacho?
I don't know if it was Nacho, but I think it's people. I don't know.
Are you counting Gus as part of the cartel in your? Because he is.
He is kind of. I don't know if it's necessarily Gus.
I think it's for one of Gus's underlings. Yeah. Because these are if we assume, which I am, this is the same people who put don't.
No, it has to be.
Yeah. That person knows where Mike was, so and we know Gus wants Hector to himself. We know he doesn't quite get him, but yeah. So that's why I think.
Yeah,
it's one of Gus's people.
Yeah, basically, and this again is one of the. It sort of shows this side of Mike that's very logical. He will be able to outthink anyone, no matter what he does. This goes back to whenever he is in season 1, he sees the buddies that, killed the boy, and he sits there like, I can sit here and play drunk, and then I'll be able to outshoot them. He can outthink anyone. As long as they're acting logically, as long as they're acting rationally, he'll be able to outthink them. You see that, and you see this here. It's like, you had no idea what he was going to do.
Until now.
Until all of a sudden, it just clicks like, of course. This makes so much sense. And just how practical he was about everything. Because if I were in that situation, not only would, because I would have and just waited out the transmitter and just sort of went about my merry way and told someone about it. Again, inefficient, I'd probably be dead too. But he sits there and he has the foresight to...
Yeah, you shouldn't try and snipe anyone.
Yeah.
Don't get in this situation.
But the fact that he has his foresight to sit and use his radio to drain the battery, knowing full well it's going to bring the people up, and then to sit and here's your plan fully in motion. I can only assume that we'll see this plan play out next episode. But this just...
I mean, they could drag it out. Mike could stake out wherever they go for days, and then at the end of next episode, he's just like, you hear car door slam, and then cut to black.
Yep. So
it could extend. I want to see Gus's people, and I want to see Gus. Maybe he just goes straight up to Los Pollos Hermanos. It's like, what the hell? Why are they at this chicken restaurant?
Yeah. Well, it is exciting. We did get a teaser for the next episode, or I should say next time. This could be on a future time. Might not be
necessarily. It's the first episode. It might just be this whole season on, so we might still not get Gus in a second.
But but that teaser is still there, and I'm looking to see our favorite Chilean villain.
Indeed. Do you have anything else about this last scene? Because that's the end of the episode.
I thought it was great. Mike evidences that with pistachios you can't eat just one, and
right. Well, he was also just trying to avoid boredom by eating.
It was a joke.
Because, well, I mean,
you've never had pistachio.
This too.
Pistachios are delicious. Just they're super green saltiness, and you start cracking one, and you can't help it. Like 5 minutes later, there goes the whole bag.
He didn't have a TV on mute, nothing. Mm-hmm. So boring looking. But
I mean, have you seen Mike's face? I mean, he's always got that droopy life bores me.
Droopy dog is a good way. Very old droopy dog. Let's. My first standout for the episode was I called it "No Legal Leg to Stand On," which was just. I'm happy they addressed that Chuck really didn't have a way to use the recording on its own in court, like they seem to imply with the cliffhanger, but apparently not. As Howard pointed out in the first Howard scene, the only Howard scene in this episode, he laid out a bunch of scenarios like, well, you could use it for this or this or this, so what are you going to do? And then Chuck was just like, basically winked at him, was like, oh, don't you worry. Like, Chuck seems to have in mind some Slip and Jimmy way to get to his brother, which involves Ernie. Poor Ernie. Yeah. Poor Ernie and poor Howard getting used by everybody. And then my second one was I called Silent Mike. But in Mike's scenes, all of them, there were barely any dialogue, and yet still fully engaged. Like, what on earth is going to happen? What's the next piece of the puzzle? What's he going to do next? And I was fully content to watch a man disassemble a car and just try to figure out and stare at a tracker through magnifying glass, and it's fine because it's Jonathan Banks, and it's awesome. My third one was no Gus. This is not a positive. There's no Gus. As Gus was promoted hard before the season, like we have full on Los Pollos Hermanos commercials. Try our curly fries. They're making the curly fries in New York at the honest to God Pollos Hermanos restaurant. And no Gus. And this isn't really a knock on the writers directing because I'm sure they've got a good story for the season. Mm-hmm. I just want that character back in my life. And yeah, I know they had a lot of reminding of the audience, setting up to do because he's presumably going to appear in Mike's storyline because I don't think Saul knows it. Mm-hmm. But I'm ready for the Chicken Man. Yeah. And that's all I got. You got anything else in your notes?
I mean, I sort of...
We hit all yours on the recap?
Kind of. I don't know. I couldn't help but talk about them. But most certainly my biggest standout... Just to give you an insight into me, I'm a big musical guy. Music's a big driving part of what I do. It's one thing that I consider a whole lot.
Dave Porter's your guy.
So the music behind Gus's scene was just really, really well done to me.
You mean Mike?
Did I say Gus? Yeah, Mike. Sorry, I'm looking forward to Gus. He's kind of on my mind. But no, the music behind Mike's scene, I absolutely love that. It was definitely my number one standout. Number two would just be again how I see all these themes and I see how they're playing out so very strongly. I think that and again sort of one third theme that wasn't really I didn't really touch on too much, but it's just there's sort of this recurring idea of future comeuppance. And it starts with Chuck looking at Jimmy saying, "Oh, your time will come." Absolutely, just this foreshadowing the future for Jimmy, and then with the captain, sort of telling him, you can do all this, you can be scummy, but you'll meet your match at some point, and then sort of not quite so explicitly stated, but like with the Salamancas or the cartel, because again, I believe it's the Salamancas that ended up bugging. Or I should say, putting the tracker on Mike's car, and here comes Mike, and Mike will be sort of their comeuppance. I mean, ultimately, we know that Mike is not the one that destroys the cartel in Breaking Bad, but that there is this comeuppance.
He works for the man who does.
Mm-hmm. And then just a third standout to me was just how strong of an opening episode this was, because so often you'll end up seeing seasons start out slow and they just don't really. There's not a lot of momentum, and you're just sort of like, well, it'll start in the next episode, and it'll be great. Especially, one show that was really, really bad about this. One of my favorite shows, NBC's Hannibal. It seemed like every single season started out so goddamn slow. And then it eventually ramped up, and then it's sort of breakneck by the end of the season. I really liked how this season was. I mean, even from the Gene scenes, which are very black and white.
If you don't count the Gene scenes, then we pretty much it just carried it right over from all the other storylines carried over from the very end of season 2, and like we picked up exactly where we left off.
Exactly, and I love that. It sort of helped that feel that nothing is stopped. There's no real time passing. There's nothing to slow down. It's just these events are still going, and they are going strong. And the writing was very strong. The acting was very strong. It was a really invigorating, strong episode. And I know I've used strong a whole lot, and it's getting overused. But I was really blown away with how great of a opening episode it was for this particular season. It makes me real excited going forward.
Definitely. Here's hope they could keep it up.
Hope.
All right. Now, let's wrap up this first episode of the podcast. First real one. We did a preview, but wrap up the first real one. We'd love to hear your all's feedback. We're just getting started. First-time podcasters, but we could use your help for more things to talk about. Tweet us at maybe-text-Jimmy. You can email your feedback to me, Aaron, Aaron, at screentower.com. And yeah, we look forward to getting your all's input and keep on listening.
Indeed. Something that I think would be kind of cool is perhaps, again, going with the feedback is if we can get enough people perhaps submitting like talking points to talk about, almost like a slanted Q&A, like where the Q&A is not necessarily, usually whenever you think about Q&A, it's about a product, like for instance, like the podcast or perhaps ourselves. If you can give us like questions that you think that you saw, like, hey, this is something that I really hope is addressed, and we could, maybe sit down and talk about it if we have enough people coming forward. But please, we'd love to hear your feedback. This is a very listener-driven podcast, or at least I hope that it will be, and that you will make this great.
Once we get a few listeners. All right. Thanks, guys. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Cody.